Hey, Deserving listeners, it's time for me to react to your comments from my videos from last week. Let's get to it. Love is Blind #1, Season 9. Solitary Asians is what I called the episode. I forget why I called it that. Leon Marie says, "Hi, Dr. Honda. Thank you for your little intro about finding love being a luck of the draw. I really think more people need to understand that it isn't always easy to find someone you align with on different levels." End of comment. Yeah, it can be luck of the draw. Some people meet each other right off the bat. My parents met in high school, and they're still married after almost 62 years. So some people are lucky like that. Other people, it can take decades to find the right person, and it has nothing to do with your criteria or your personality. I mean, it might. Therapy can be something to look into, but sometimes it's just luck of the draw, you know? Love is Blind #2, Lindsay Compton, 2Corn member. "I think you can claim at least a little bit of credit for making therapy more mainstream, Dr. Kirk." End of comment. Right. So I was saying that we've worked really hard as a field to make therapy more mainstream. And it's nice that 2Corn YouTube member Lindsay is saying that I can take credit. I imagine that I did sway some people, but on the overall movement, I am a very, very small, if maybe even insignificant part of that. I mean, there's been a lot of efforts over the years, even before I was a therapist. 6Leaf YouTube member Suna Luch says, "The person who gives me Leo vibes from season 7 is actually Megan W. because," that's interesting. So Megan W. reminded you of Leo, the Rolex guy, "because she said in the beginning that she is afraid that someone would love her for her money and not for her. And then she also kind of not mentioning, but somehow communicating to her dates that she's wealthy, but she is not as overt as Leo about it. But she also seems to really care about money." End of comment. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Not as bad as Leo, but yeah, true. Let's see. Love is Blind #3, White Privilege is what I called that episode. Insane Psycho says, "As a half Asian, half Latin person, you talking about the way it feels to be mixed and that Casey and Patrick conversation was incredible to hear because it echoed all my emotions. Thank you so much." End of comment. Yeah. You know, all of us Happas are in this together. Daliad says, "Yeah, this is really an interesting conversation." Right. So this must be the episode where Casey pressures Patrick to talk about his ethnicity. Dahlia says, "Yeah, this is a really interesting conversation. I can say that as a black woman, we are both hypersexualized, but also considered masculine in the same breath. It's kind of late in the night, and I think I was almost saying breadth, with the D. There's a very strange duality there between, as a black woman, we are both hypersexualized, but also considered masculine. Very strange duality. Then I think about black men who are hypersexualized, but they tend to embrace it because they think it's a good thing, and they don't realize it's not a compliment to be considered some sort of sexual animal." Yeah. "Sometimes it feels like white people are the only ones who get to be fully human with the entire emotional spectrum." End of comment. Yeah, this is a well-researched and understood phenomenon. Love is Blind #4, Awkward Racism, I call this episode. 2Corn member, meaning that they've been a member for at least 2 years, if not quite a bit longer. Mood Inc. says, "I think people should not even try to justify whether they are not racist, misogynist, etc. As you often say in other videos, we all grow up in a racist, homophobic, and misogynist society. As a woman of color who's been trying to unlearn a lot of things I was taught growing up, I still find myself saying the dumbest thing ever sometimes, or finding myself judging others based on my internalized misogyny. We all unfortunately have thoughts or behaviors that we grew up with. There is no value in proving that you are completely free of racist, homophobic, misogynist values." End of comment. Yeah, very well said, 2Corn member Mood Inc. Yeah, the counter sort of to this is that unfortunately, if people if they had a nuanced conversation on a reality TV show, if someone were to admit, like, Yeah, well, I do have some racist attitudes because I was raised this way. If you don't have a lot of sophistication around that, which most people don't, it might come out a little funny. Plus, if it's edited, and even if it's not nefariously edited, if it's just taken out of context, then you can experience tremendous cancellation and horribleness and bullying and maybe even losing your job because you admitted that you have racist attitudes. You know what I mean? And I've actually experienced this firsthand, not on the internet, but in my professional life. I was open about my bias and had been through a lot of consultation and a lot of education and a lot of therapy and a lot of thinking and, all the things. And all I was doing was talking about how I was even just saying I grew up with a bias. That, I was recalling I won't go into detail, but I was stating on the record that I had a bias when I was a teenager. And I didn't say, and therefore I did horrible things to people. I just said, I just had this belief because everyone around me had this belief. But once I went to college, it went away because I started to interact with more people and I was exposed to things. And just for that, I experienced consequences among therapists, among professionals, among professors. So even when you have the right mindset and you are wise and smart enough to communicate about it, even educated people will jump down your throat for it. So we don't live in the best landscape for people to admit that. I mean, even when I admit it, this is my channel, so no one can fire me. But people do attack me all the time for this and other reasons. So it's unfortunate. But I totally agree, and it is often what I say, is the notion that you could claim you don't have racist attitudes would say that you were born on another planet. Every society on this planet has massive amounts of bias and prejudice and bigotry, different amounts among different ways, in different ways, but every society does. When we look around the world, when we study it, it's there. And you just can't get out of that. And you'll never get rid of it, but you can wrestle with it. You can become aware of it. You can soften it by having contact with people of that group, because that almost always dispels the nonsense. Anyway, so the rest of this episode is going to be for members of the YouTube channel. All the episodes that I do that are sort of one-off, that aren't reacting to the show, are going to be for members because I want to reward y'all for becoming a member and literally paying my bills. So thanks for that. There's a lot more comments, so join me in the member zone. Otherwise, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.